Welcome to the People Leaders Podcast, the audio resource for managers and business leaders creating high-performing teams. Join leadership and team development experts Jan and Michelle Turkelson each week as they explore both subjects from every angle. Through practical tips, valuable insights, and compelling interviews with leadership experts around the world, you'll learn how to bring out the best in your staff and how to give your best as a leader.
Welcome to episode 3 of the People Leaders Podcast with Michelle and Jan Turkelson. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Jan. And if you haven't already, we invite you to listen to episode 2 of the podcast where we gave an overview of our high-performing team assessment tool and also set up the framework behind it.
Yeah, and it's a tool we've developed over many years. And in today's episode, we're going to explore the first dimension of the tool, which is direction.
Now, direction is on the top of the list of the high-performing teams and that's for a reason, because it is so important that every team is crystal clear about where they're heading, what their target is, why they exist. It's the goal. It's the reason that the team is together. And, we haven't, used the word direction, for the wrong reason. It's because if you are really clear about what it is you want to achieve, you're more likely to achieve it.
Yeah, you know when you're on track and you know when you're off track.
Yeah.
So in the High Performing Team Assessment tool, there are 5 different categories within this whole dimension of direction. And most teams are going to rate themselves between, 1 and 7 on this dimension. So if you're listening to this, just think about where you would place yourself and also your team in this dimension.
So if I was to ask the listener, all right, in my team, we understand the metrics used to assess our performance and we measure it regularly. So what is this? So we understand the metrics used. This is all about measures. Are we clear on what it is that we are measuring our performance against? Is it a qualitative measure? Is it a quantitative measure? Is it number of calls we take? Is it number of deals we make? It's those sorts of things. What are the measures that we are going to use that will tell us, we're heading in the right direction?
And some of those measures can be external, so you might be getting feedback from clients and stakeholders, etc. It could be internal measures, like the number of redos if you're doing reports, or if a number of changes that you make on contracts. One of the things that we've noticed, Michelle, is that if you can just come up with 3 really good metrics, don't make it too complicated. Just make it so it's easy to gather the data, it's relevant and it's useful, then you will really see a shift in performance, because you'll be able to measure it and know when you're on track and when you're off track. So is there any other tip?
So the only thing I would say about the whole measure is that, from experience, is that some teams get caught in this cycle of, oh my God, we need to measure everything, or we need to get the measure exactly right. And so they can spend a whole lot of time on reporting the measures, gathering the information to report the measures instead of doing their job. Right? The measure is just data that demonstrates that they are doing what they say they should and are doing. So, that would be a warning I would give to a team, is don't focus too much on the gathering of the measure and making sure that it's 100% right. Just make an agreement, have a discussion. If there is that margin of error, just be clear that there's a margin of error in this, but you don't want to spend all your time and energy and effort getting the measure just right.
Yeah, and just have a couple of them.
Yeah, good.
And the next one is that, team goals are agreed, they're clearly defined, meaning that they're specific, and also that they're appropriate. And goals are very, very important for setting the direction of the team. Because, again, when you have a goal, you are focusing your energy and your attention. And this is where you know you can be effective, because you will focus your time, your resources, your energy, your communication in the direction of where you want to go.
Yeah.
And that's your
and you
objective.
can see how this is linked to the previous one. Like, we understand the metrics, and it's almost like, unless you're clear about the goal, where, what is the link between what we're trying to achieve and the measure that we're using to prove that we're heading in that right direction, you're going to see that each of these elements are interrelated. And so being clear about what it is that we are trying to achieve, what our goal is, very important. And one of the acronyms that people use in order to hone in on this is that SMART, specific, measurable, agreed, realistic, with a time frame. The more specific you can be about what it is you're trying to achieve, the clearer everybody in the team is going to be about, this is what I need to do to hit that target, achieve that goal. The more messy and unclear you are, it's open to interpretation. So if you're certain about this is what we want to achieve, then be clear about it.
And some of the research around setting goals is that they need to be quite challenging, not too challenging that they're stressful, but they're challenging enough that they are incorporating, your mental, faculties. Also, you're motivated to do them. You're using your skills. You're setting milestones, which are really important to set for goals. Yeah,
and you're able to get feedback on progress.
Yeah. And so if you have all those factors, you're setting yourself up for success. The third one in our dimensions on direction of team members have sufficient resources to fulfill their tasks and objectives. So I want you to think where you are right now in the work that you're doing. So whether or not you're a people leader or you're a member of a team, do you feel that you have sufficient resources to fulfill your tasks and to fulfill the objectives of what we just talked about?
So resources can take the form of people, technology, space, time, access, equipment, all of those things. These are the things, the inputs that you need in order to achieve your goal or produce an outcome.
Yeah, and just what you said then, access to the right people, to the right technology at the right time. And again, we're drilling down to a little bit of the specifics, but sometimes tweaking those little specifics just by 5% will make a really big impact for the team's level of effectiveness. So just having a discussion around that. So if I was to ask you, listeners, now, is any of those resources, if you were to just shift one of those to enhance one of those aspects by 5%, which one would that be? And perhaps have a conversation with your people leader, perhaps have that conversation with your team.
Because it could be, resources could take the form of skills. So people say, do you have the right people? Like, what does that mean, the right people? You dig a little bit deeper into just that element. It could be, do we have, the right skills?
Do
we have the right attitudes? There is a lot in each of those areas that you can tweak and improve if you give it a little bit of time and thought. But what a great thing to do in a team meeting. Just pose that question. Do we have sufficient resources? Here's our goal as a team, or our top 3 goals for the year, whatever it is. Do we have the right resources? And we can categorise them into, people, technology,
space, time, equipment,
whatever. And just see what the team comes up with.
Now, when I hear that, we get feedback about people leaders, I don't have the budget, I don't have the time for it. Sometimes when you ask your team questions, you will solicit answers that you hadn't even thought about as a people leader. Like, your team are closest to the action, so asking them for solutions is a really good strategy.
Good point.
And even to the effect that you may not have the budget, but if we didn't have the budget, what can we...
Yeah, exactly. What can we do with what we've got?
Yeah, because sometimes it's just rearranging things.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so if we have a look at the next one, what's the next one, Jan?
So performance is either part of our regular agenda or discussed often. So think about in your team or in the last week or two, how often do you as team members talk about performance?
And then I ask the question, okay, so if we talk about performance all the time, are we talking about performance in the past tense, or are we talking about performance in the future of what we want to achieve? Because I bet you most team meetings focus on past performance. And this is a bit of a mental shift that we challenge teams and people leaders to make, and that is have a think about focusing your attention on moving forward, because spend a little bit of time looking at past performance, but only so that you can learn from it. Last week we didn't do as well. What are we going to do differently this week? So see how you just shifted it
forward. That's
forward.
Good. And we talked about what's our definition of performance, and really is are we doing what we're supposed to do or what we've agreed to do with the quality and quantity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And our last one in the dimension of direction is team members understand and agree on team goals and how it supports the strategic intent of the organisation. So really this is all about the link between what the company or organisation have set themselves up for their strategy, and how do I, as a team member...
and our team support that. And if you're in a very large organisation, you can see how that link becomes unclear at times. This is the role of a people leader. A very important role is almost to interpret that, is to show that, to demonstrate that, to create that link for team members. And it sort of adds to that other issue, Jan, about showing meaning. If I can see what I'm doing on a day-to-day does link to our overall goals and organisation, it does give a greater sense of meaning to the job that you're doing.
So I was reading an article the other day, and it was for a team who were on a factory production line, and they were making widgets or some type of technology that goes into artificial, I think, like heart valves or something like that. And what the organisation does is they set up a yearly function, like a yearly, gathering of all the people whose lives have been saved with this technology, and they meet them and they have, breakfast with them. And so here you can see your day-to-day activity, even though sometimes it is mundane, can really impact that strategy of the organisation.
I love that, Jen, because you don't necessarily have to say, see this line item that you put in every month in the financial report, that links to this line item that goes in. It's not about that. It's actually the broader meaning that you get from the work that you're doing is contributing to that, that bigger goal. That's great. Great example.
And as a people leader, get creative about that. And even if you don't come up with it, ask your team. So how do you think we impact? What is the result that our team is having? And if you can't find it, go out and find it, from your clients or stakeholders or, your one-up manager. Have that conversation with them. So as a team now, we've gone through all the different items in direction. What would you suggest, Michelle, if you were a people leader or a team member as far as this is concerned, direction?
What would I suggest? Well, the first thing I'd do is I would reflect on those sort of elements that we've spoken about and think about what am I doing well in each of these areas, and keep doing that. And are there some things that I could tweak? And the other thing is go back to your team and see what they have to say also.
Yeah, so like we say, the answer's in the room.
That's it.
Okay, good job.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the People Leaders Podcast. For show notes and other resources, please visit us at peopleleaderspodcast.com. And while you're there, you can subscribe for future episodes so you can continue your own leadership journey. And please be sure to share this and other episodes with your friends and colleagues. The People Leaders Podcast is brought to you by the Experts on Air Podcast Network.